dismiss history at our peril.
Liberty Nation Radio with Mark Angelides.
And you're back on Liberty Nation Radio. I remain your host, Mark Angelides, and we're continuing our conversation with Liberty Nation senior political analyst and long-time host of this here radio show, Tim Donner. Thanks for sticking around, Tim. So earlier in the show, we were talking how little, really, Eric Adams' withdrawal from the New York City mayoral race impacts Zohran Mamdani's chances of winning this November. But what I'd like to do is kind of expand that and talk about, or get your ideas at least, on how do you think a Zohran Mamdani win in New York is going to impact the Democratic Party's perception of the Democratic Party across the nation?
Well, I think Democratic leaders themselves are very sensitive to the branding of their party. I mean, there's no question about it, because you see pretty much all the major domos, other than New York Governor Kathy Hochul, shying away from endorsing Mamdani. We get things from Chuck Schumer, Senate Minority Leader, and Hakeem Jeffries, House Minority Leader, saying, we're continuing our conversations with Zohran Mamdani, which means we're trying to find some way to both be loyal to a Democratic nominee and yet not brand the party as far-left socialist. And so it's a very tricky kind of conundrum for Democrats. And a lot of it is because this is a year where there's only 3 races of any national significance: the governor's races in New Jersey and Virginia and the New York City mayoral race. And so all the attention is focused on New York. So when Mamdani wins, which seems, I'm not going to say certain, but seems highly likely at this point, now the Democrats will be left with the branding of having doubled down on their progressive bent over the last 4 years. Rather than turning to the center, the party will be seen as doubling down and tacking even further left by having a self-proclaimed democratic socialist as the most high-profile winner this year. And we saw what the party did when they were afraid that Bernie Sanders could become the standard bearer for the party as a presidential nominee in both 2016 and 2020. And they ran him out of the race essentially by basically telling all the other so-called moderate Democrats to get lost and leave Joe Biden in as the only alternative in 2020, just like they did with Hillary Clinton in 2016. So
that was very democratic of them, by the way, don't you think?
Well, not to mention that their nominee this year was someone who never received a single vote for president after running twice well, she didn't really run in 2024 for the nomination, but she received no support and likely would not have received the nomination if there was an open primary process. And in 2016, they did everything they could to make sure it would be Hillary Clinton and not Bernie Sanders. So that tells you what they feel about the label of socialist in the Democratic Party. They have to be very careful with that. But at this point, it's out of their control. I mean, New York City is its own universe. It's far to the left of mainstream America. 92% roughly of New Yorkers identify as Democrats. So they've got themselves a serious problem on their hands. And so Kathy Hochul is a good example of what happens. Kathy Hochul, damned if she does, damned if she doesn't. She was damned by the likes of Alexandria Ocasio-Cortez and the other progressives in the party for not endorsing Mamdani. And then when she finally did endorse Mamdani, she got attacked from the center by people who said, what are you doing supporting a socialist? So you see what the problem is, and it's not going to go away. After the November elections, assuming Mamdani wins, all the reporting, the stories, the narrative is going to be the Democratic Party has moved even further left than they were under Joe Biden.
Yeah, I like how you discuss this as a branding problem because after 2024, Donald Trump won 2024 because a lot of America thought that the party's going too far left with Joe Biden, with Kamala Harris. Now, Kamala Harris is pretty far left. Joe Biden's fairly centrist. I mean, sure, he was
centrist, and then he was held captive by his progressive wing. Yeah.
So you've got this large chunk of America saying that's just too far left. We need, they would be saying we need somebody Bill Clinton-esque. Who, by the way, if you go back and you watch some of Bill Clinton's things, some of his speeches, his proclamations, and you look at him, you think this guy's MAGA. This guy's MAGA in the 1990s. It's really, there's not a lot of difference between when it comes down to policy. But see, you've got this big chunk of America saying this has just gone too far left, and then Zoran Mamdani presumably wins. And as you say, it's the most important city in the world in so many ways, and it's under the control of somebody who is so far left that it's going to taint the rest of the party going into not just the 2026 midterms, but 2028 and even beyond. And I really think that, good luck to Mr. Mamdani. I hope he does great for New York City. But I think his association with the Democratic Socialists, what is actually the groups that he works with, that he is part of, and the things that they put out. And you did a great article on this, Tim, on the pages of LibertyNation.com, talking about how it is the destruction of the nuclear family in so many ways. And that just doesn't seem to me to be what America has an appetite for.
Well, Mark, you're talking about the Democratic Socialists of America, which is the party that Zoran Mamdani proudly has belonged to for about 8 or 9 years. And part and parcel of their platform is to basically destroy the nuclear family unit. They've said things like the only difference between a family and prostitution is what price you have to pay. These are the kind of statements that really repel normal Americans. And I think that, Andrew Cuomo will try to use this stuff down the stretch. I don't think it will be successful. But the difference, you brought up Bill Clinton, and you know what? The fundamental difference between Bill Clinton and Joe Biden is that Clinton had really sharp political instincts. He knew where things were headed, and he brought his party, he tacked them to the middle. And I hate to use a well-worn expression, but Zoran Mamdani represents the Democrats' chickens coming home to roost.
Indeed. We're going to be back with Tim Donner after this short break. Don't go anywhere.
We dismiss history at our peril.
Liberty Nation Radio with Mark Angelides.